Let's get insights from maritime security expert Raymond Powell. Good morning and thank you for joining us again, Ray.
Hey, good
Hi.
evening from California. How are you?
Oh, you're in California. Well, thanks for joining us, Ray. We'd like to start off with asking just what structure are we taking a look at here? We're quite in the dark here. The public is quite in the dark. How big is this? What's the significance of this structure? And I think the Philippine Navy has gone back and said this might just be remnants of an old structure long time ago.
Yeah, that seems very likely, given what we know about it, which isn't very much, quite frankly. And we're still waiting to see if we can get some updated imagery. The structure seems to be maybe about 7 meters long or so. It may be made out of, we don't know what it's made out of. It may be an old wooden structure that was put there a long time ago by someone. So it's we don't know whether it was with the Philippines or China or someone else who put it there. I think we're all pretty in the dark, but it seems very likely, based on what we're hearing, that it's actually probably been there for quite a long time.
Given where it was found, Ray, what's the significance of that area? I mean, assuming it would be China, what would it benefit them?
Well, so if there were actual construction happening there, then we would be alarmed, right? It would be oddly placed, but it is fairly close to the entrance to the shoal. So you can imagine if somebody wanted to try to control the entrance to the shoal and they wanted to construct something there. But anything that we saw which looked like new construction would be very alarming, not just because, of course, it's perhaps seeking to take control of the shoal even more than China has already. But of course, the shoal is only about 120 nautical miles from the coast of Luzon, which is, strategically a pretty important place.
Yeah.
So we certainly would not want to see anything more substantial going on there. But this may not be the thing that we're afraid of.
Okay.
But because these formations were spotted near the lagoon's entry and exit point, so how significant is that? Right.
Yeah. So again, right now, China controls entry and exit to the shoal by basically posting ships right inside the shoal's entrance and of course, patrolling the outside of the shoal. This particular place is not that close. I mean, so it is relatively close to the entrance to the shoal, but it's not like it's right on the entrance to the shoal. So again, I kind of think that this may just be an old, and it may have actually been something that the Philippines put there, because if it's been there for, say, decades, then this could have been there a long time ago.
But how come we are just finding it now?
Part of it is the Philippines is doing a lot more aerial reconnaissance than it has before. It's not something that's that easy to see from a satellite. You really have to be looking for it, and you have to be, looking for that particular thing. It's underwater. It's not that big, and it's the shoal has got a lot of weird colors. So I think in some ways you just sort of got lucky, or maybe unlucky, since maybe it got everybody spun up over something that may not be a huge deal.
So in other words, Ray, are you saying this could possibly just simply be something that the fishermen put up, or some traders?
Yeah, I mean, it could be, or even the Philippine government. People forget that a long time ago, back in 1999, when the BRP Sierra Madre was grounded at Ayungin Shoal, there was actually a second ship, the BRP Banguet, that was grounded at Scarborough Shoal. And unfortunately, that one didn't last very long. The Estrada administration, after China really complained loudly about it, towed it off after only a month. So, there was a lot going on back then. So this may have been just one more thing that was happening a long time ago.
All right. So, but under the UNCLOS standard practice, who bears the responsibility of, removing such a structure?
Well, whoever put it there, but we don't know who that was.
Yeah. My point that is. I mean,
well, Rick, given there's a level of paranoia, I think, right now, especially given the increasing tensions with Taiwan, and I think you testified, you were in Capitol Hill and talking about the gray zone. Yeah, you were, and talking about the gray zone tactics that was being deployed against Taiwan and specifically other interests in South China Sea. Now, what is the importance of this? For us in the Philippines.
Well, so my testimony was focused in on the gray zone tactics of China and then America's need to have a gray zone counter strategy. And essentially, what I laid out for the senators was, we have been watching China's gray zone activity across East Asia
Yes.
pick up in intensity and in ambition over the last couple of decades, and we still don't have a strategy. And that we should really be alarmed about that, because we tend in the West to divide things very neatly between peacetime and wartime, between legal and illegal, between civilian and military, and China just doesn't. They are able to fill all the spaces in between, and that's why we call it the gray zone. So that was my emphasis, and I also connected it to China's political warfare, which it uses to try to essentially convince its neighbors to just give up and to give up on their rights. And that's it's an ongoing campaign, and I really think the United States needs to take it much more seriously.
But do you think, Ray, what China is doing right now to the Philippines is still bordering on the gray zone? It seems pretty much direct to me already.
Well, so that's the funny thing about the term gray zone. So, sometimes people, one of the reasons people don't like the term gray zone is that some things to many people seem very black and white, right? If something is clearly illegal under international law, that's black and white. The term gray zone is actually not so much, we're not really talking necessarily about these gray areas. Sometimes we're just saying we don't have good response mechanisms because it doesn't fit in our neat categories. So we tend to have, for example, in the United States, we have a military and we have a Coast Guard. That's what the Philippines has. It has a military and it has a Coast Guard. China basically has developed a paramilitary. So it's essentially a military-like capability that it uses in peacetime. And the China Coast Guard is part of this paramilitary force. So is its maritime militia. So this is just one of many, many areas that fit into this gray zone. And the reason that the term gray zone still is useful is because it emphasizes the fact that we don't have good response mechanisms because it's not easily categorized.
That's right. Well, the reason why I asked you about the gray zone array is because we all know that if China is able to establish some sort of a structure within the West Philippine Sea, they could use this argument in case we go to, we take this up into the international community. But I hope you could explain to us the significance of putting up a physical structure in these contested areas.
So, China has really, since the 2002 Declaration on the Conduct of Parties in the South China Sea, or the DOC, we like to call it, has really avoided putting structures on previously uninhabited features. So Scarborough Shoal wasn't necessarily covered by that, but nobody has put a structure on it because it wasn't inhabited already. So if they were to cross that threshold and they were actually start to build something there. Now, of course, they could say, well, we've declared it a nature reserve, but you'll notice their pictures of their nature reserve, only about a third of it is under the nature reserve.
Yes.
There are two of the legs of the triangle are not covered by the nature reserve. So we're still concerned that someday if they began to build something there, we've seen in the past where they can go very quickly from building a few huts to building an airfield and a port.
So why doesn't the Philippines then build a structure, a permanent structure there?
Well, right now the Philippines really can't even get there. Frankly, it's even getting a ship there. Part of the reason there was a big collision there in August, it was because the Philippines managed to get much closer to the shoal than China has been allowing the Philippines to get.
Yeah.
And so I think the China got overexcited, and that's how the destroyer got involved. So, but, I looked at I was just looking at ship tracks today. There's, I think, 14 Chinese ships working very hard to keep Philippine ships out. So, you're not going to be able to just show up with some dredgers and start making an artificial island there.
Well, as you know, we have already filed 200 plus diplomatic protests since 2022. So, what other measures
What else can we do
to address these provocations?
Yeah, guys, I think we've had this discussion before,
Yeah.
That essentially the Philippines has to be in this thing for the long haul. It's not, China has made a big move over the last 18 months to really solidify its hold on Scarborough Shoal, and has really increased the number of ships that are enforcing its exclusion zone. And so, that's not going to go away very quickly, and maybe not during Xi Jinping's presidency.
Yeah.
So, but Xi Jinping won't live forever. Whoever comes after Xi Jinping may or may not look at things the same way. And, as long as the Philippines keep showing up and keep showing the flag and saying, we're not going away, we're not giving up. I mean, I think that's very important to do, because what you're hoping for is that at one point, whoever comes after Xi Jinping looks down at what they're doing in, across the West Philippine Sea and saying, this is causing us more problems than we want. It's causing us difficulties in our problems with the United States and Europe and Japan. And why are we doing this? So,
Yes.
it's a long-term resistance strategy.
Well, last question on my part, Ray. Just how significant is this West Philippine Sea for China in terms of their positioning for a possible invasion of Taiwan in the future?
Well, so the West Philippine Sea is not what it is. What the West Philippine Sea represents to China is a couple things. One is they are very much trying to push the United States out of East Asia. They would like essentially to have their own sphere of influence in East Asia, and so having the United States in South Korea and Japan, and in relations with Taiwan and Philippines, all of this is something that China very much does not want. And so that's part of it. A second part is that China is very much trying to control energy flows. China is very, very dependent on imported energy from the Middle East. And by the way, so is Taiwan. Taiwan gets a ton of energy, liquid natural gas coming through the sea. And so being able to control the flow of energy through the entire South China Sea is very important for what China considers to be its long-term security.
All right, with that, as always, thank you for your wonderful insights, and thank you for your time, maritime security expert Raymond Powell.
All right, I look forward to seeing you guys again.
Thank you.
Sure.